Now that the 2023 season is over, we think that this is the perfect time to do the season wrap-up. There is a lot to get through, so we'll get right into the action straight away as we try and put this year's Formula 1 season into a short video. Let's get right into it. Let's start at the very top with the champions, which of course were Max Verstappen and Red Bull, who had probably the most dominant season in the sport's history. They won every single race of the season except one, which was in Singapore, when Carlos Sainz had an incredible victory. Verstappen won all but 3 races of the season, 1 to Sainz and 2 to his teammate Sergio Perez, who stand the season off so well. Verstappen broke so many records, but some of the standout ones were beating the record for the most wins in a single season yet again. The highest percentage of wins in a season and breaking former Red Bull driver Sebastian Vettel's 9 wins in a row, with Max getting 10 before getting the record cut short in Singapore. He had the best season ever, and there is not much more to say other than he was on top of the world with Red Bull. We must however touch on Sergio Perez, who was shocking for the majority of the season as he would hardly be on the podium in the second half of the season, and would be embarrassed if we are honest. But Red Bull did win the Constructors' Championship at the end of the day, so Checo did his thing in assisting Max in a way. We then moved down to the teams who were fighting Red Bull when they could, and those were Mercedes and Ferrari teams. Coming into the season, they both expected to be fighting for the title, but they found out pretty quickly that they would not be able to do that. Most of the season after both teams brought their first major upgrade package, they were the 2 teams fighting for P2 in the championship after Aston Martin fell away. Mercedes looked quick at times, but so did the Ferrari however. The Scuderia were the ones who did pick up the only non-Red Bull win of the season. It went down to the last race to see who would be the runners-up to Red Bull, and Mercedes pulled it off by the skin of their teeth. But both of the teams would much rather be fighting each other for the title and not P2 and P3 in the standings, whilst their main rivals are miles up the road. Overall, for both of these teams, it was a poor year for their standards, but they both had some bright moments and they do hope to bridge that gap to Red Bull for 2024. Will they be able to do that? Let us know in the comments below who you think will get closer. Moving on, we want to talk about 2 teams who had very polar opposite seasons, and those are Aston Martin and McLaren. The team in green is where we want to start, and they started the season being on the podium consistently with Fernando Alonso. They made a massive jump over the winter, going from fighting for points to being the closest team to Red Bull and most likely to win the race, until that was Canada, when they would bring upgrades and their performance fell off a cliff. They went from fighting for the podium and being on it every single race to just fighting for the points-paying positions with a very poor car that was hard to drive. They would go on to finish P5 in the championship, which is very disappointing as at one point it looked like P2. Then it was for certain P4 as Mercedes and Ferrari made the step ahead, but one team beat them to P4, which surprised Aston Martin but also everyone else on the grid. And that team was of course McLaren. Up to around Austria, McLaren was nowhere and was lucky to get points at times with 2 drivers who have massive potential in Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. They would bring upgrades that saw their car become something brand new, which we expected going into the season as the team knew it would be a slow start and they would start halfway through the season, and they were not wrong. In Silverstone, they would qualify 2 to 3 and finish 2 to 4 with Norris ahead of Piastri. And it showed how they were in contention for podiums for the rest of the season. And they were, with Norris getting the most podiums than he has ever had in a season, getting multiple P2s. Piastri also got his maiden win in the sport, even though it was a sprint. It still goes down as a win, so that is good for McLaren. They managed to take home P4 in the championship as they edged out Aston Martin due to how consistently at the top, whilst Aston Martin was only picking up P9s and P10s. There is a lot of promise going into 2024 for McLaren, as if they can start the season off how they ended this year's. They could see themselves getting wins by the end of the season. They have proven to everyone that they can make the right upgrades. Now it is seeing if they can start the season off well, because in the past 2 seasons, they have struggled. Overall, it has been a very good year for McLaren and a down good year in hindsight for Aston Martin, as they would have hoped for much more. Who do you think will finish higher in the championship next season? Will it be McLaren or Aston Martin? Let us know in the comments below. We want to touch on the bottom of the grid. We have a team in Williams who look like they're on the resurgence with Alex Albon leading the line. In several races this season, Albon has led the team to huge points scoring, and he has just looked like he belongs there as the team leader, and he will be able to progress with the team. Or he could join a top team again now that he has learned a lot at a smaller team in Williams, but we'll have to wait and see. There has also been a lot of drama for AlphaTauri, who had Nick de Vries replaced mid-season for Daniel Ricciardo, who would only go on to do 2 races before getting a broken hand, which would mean he would have to miss a fair few races. This meant that Liam Lawson was able to jump in, which allowed him to show the world what he is made of and gave him a big chance of getting a full-time seat shortly. Albon had a solid year, getting several podiums, but they still seem to be behind the teams at the top and have a big bridge to the gap, but there was nothing too noticeable about their season. Haas and Alfa Romeo had a pretty dull year, with them fighting at the back, doing nothing to note. Overall, the 2023 season has been an eventful season from the top to the very bottom of the grid, even though many fans have not enjoyed it due to it being dominated by Max Verstappen and Red Bull. There still has been lots to talk about. The battle for the podium has been enjoyable at times, and not as predictable as in 2022 when we only non-read Red Bull, Mercedes or Ferrari podiums, and this season, there have been many different teams in the podium. There has been one aspect this season that has been very fun to watch, and even though Max won all the races of this season nearly, there have still been some very good ones to watch. You think of Zandvoort, which had the most overtakes in a single race ever, and Las Vegas, which had battles from top to the bottom of the grid. Monza was fun as well. Singapore for many people was the best race, due to the fight at the front being competitive and very tense down to the very last lap. The 2023 season will be remembered for a very long time for the history that was done by Max Verstappen and Red Bull. The battles were good from up and down the grid, but when you look back to what we saw this year, it is once-in-a-lifetime stuff in Formula 1. What do you think of the 2023 season? Was it one of the better ones that you've watched? Or is it forgettable for you? Please do let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and make sure you drop a like and hit that subscribe button to watch more videos like this one.